Giving students choices is one of the easiest ways to get them more invested in your class. It's one of the tips I mentioned in my 7 ideas for increasing engagement in a virtual environment, which I'll link below. But today I'm giving you 11 ideas of how to actually give students these choices in your classroom. So let's go ahead and get started right now. Hey there, this is Erica from Ever Educating, and this channel is all about teaching tips for new college instructors. So that's you. Go ahead and subscribe below. And as I mentioned, we're talking about student choice, and the first thing I'm going to talk about is obviously the easiest thing to do to give students choices in your classroom, and that's to let them choose the topic that they're going to research or write about or work on for a particular assignment, okay? So I teach writing, so of course in my case, for every single unit, they choose what they research and write about, but in your case, maybe you have certain topics that you're covering. You can still give them a choice of perhaps which topic to really emphasize in a unit, right? So maybe in Unit 1, you go over 5 different concepts or 10 different concepts. In the unit assignment, maybe they can choose which 3, which 7, which 1 to focus on in their project. And so they can actually choose the ones that interest them the most. Now for each project, perhaps you can give them a choice. They can do something formal or something more creative, right? So formal academic writing versus creative academic writing. This might mean doing a paper, right? So a research paper for the formal option, but then you can say, or option 2, create a portfolio of resources, or create a presentation or a video, a poster presentation, create a multimodal text, okay? A newsletter about this topic. Okay, so formal versus creative can perhaps get at least a few students. I think a lot of them would choose to go the more formal route just for comfort reasons because they're used to doing that. But then the ones who really thrive on creativity and having more power in how they create something would probably take your second option, and they can come up with amazing things if you give them the opportunity to do so. So maybe not for every unit, but perhaps one. You can give them this choice. Do formal academic writing or do creative academic writing. Now, if you don't want to go that far into giving them a creative choice, another option is letting them choose the genre that they complete the project as, okay? So obviously, if you give them any genre to work with, they can still go really creative, but you can limit them, right? So perhaps you say, all right, for Unit 1, we're discussing the concept of metafiction, and so you can write either a 2-page narrative response telling me about what you've learned about metafiction, or you can create a presentation about metafiction, or you can create a newsletter for high school students where you explain metafiction to them, and you can just give them a list of genres, right? Ways that they can complete their project that you find acceptable genre-wise, but then gives them choices with like, oh, you know, I never really thought about trying to teach others about the concept when I'm completing my work. Maybe that will make it easier for me to do, right? Because I want to be a teacher, or because I'm good at explaining things to my friends when, you know, that happens, so why not do it in this assignment as well? Okay, so if you don't want to just do formal and creative, you might say, here are these 5 genres that you can choose from. Go ahead and pick one and create the project using that genre. Now, in a similar vein, you might go so far as to let them choose the format that they complete the project with, okay? So not the genre in particular necessarily, but do they have the option of completing it in written word versus a video versus an audio file, right? So you might have that option, okay? So actually choose your medium, right? Choose your format. So you might have your project is to explain how these 3 concepts connect to one another in connection to this experiment we did or connection to this book we read. But you can choose to write, again, a 4-page paper, or you can create a podcast episode of this length, or you can create a video for YouTube of this length, right? And so choose one and go ahead and complete this project. Here are the requirements, right? And so in this case, they can actually choose, okay, well, I will write it. I would love to just do an audio, or I would, want to create a video. I want to go full force. And so that can really invest students in your work as well when you have the format option versus just the genre of like, here are 3 or 5 written things you can do. You might actually say you can do a written thing, a video thing, an audio thing, and so forth, okay? Maybe a live action role play in class that they present, okay? If you want to go kinesthetic in that case. But that's another option as well. Now, all these are ideas that I've actually already done in my classes, but these next ones really focus on the most successful assignment I've had with my literature students. And so I do have a blog post about it that I'll link below. But the first tip here is to have students facilitate a discussion or activity in your class. So rather than you being always the one who teaches, right, who facilitates discussion, have your students do it as well. So I do this with a group project where there's groups of 3 and they can choose, okay, well, in my case, literature, for each novel, the one that you've chosen to do your activity with, create a 30-minute activity with your partners and lead your classmates through it. So there's more involved in the unit itself, but in this case, for this tip, it's let students facilitate discussion, because then they can choose what parts of that novel interest them the most, right? So do the novel for 2 days, half of the, like one half of each day would have a group presentation. And so they have 30 minutes or more. They can go over the deadline if they want to facilitate this discussion. And so they can decide, oh, well, these things interest me the most about this novel. That's what our group is going to focus on. And again, giving them that choice gives them almost half of those week's classes for the student focus, right? And of course, if one student or 3 students like those things the most about the novel, it'll probably be that there's others who find that more interesting as well. So I'm coming at it from a more academic, analytical, like I'm a professor perspective. They're thinking, what do I just enjoy? And then how can we analyze those things that are cool, right, or are interesting? So I think having both perspectives in a class works really well. Now, in connection to this, because it's a group project that works on different novels, so it's usually have 10 groups of 3 students, this means that students can choose their deadlines for a unit. Okay? So I give them, obviously, I do random numbers, so each group has a number, and then I use my random number creator on the computer, and then let's say group 7 goes first, so they have first pick on which novel to discuss and which day to discuss it, either Tuesday or Thursday, and then I go down a list for the rest of the groups. But in this case, I make clear to them, check with your group mates. What's a good deadline for you so that, it's not a time where all of you, maybe one of you has a major game that you're going to be focusing on during those 2 weeks, or maybe someone has a family event, or you have a lot of assignments due in that week, so you don't want to use that one, right? You want to use the other one where hopefully all of you have lighter work schedules, so you can put more focus onto the unit and also do better on it. So in this case, obviously there's 10 different groups. We cover that in 5 different weeks. So they can choose what deadline do they have for that unit. In a somewhat similar vein, there's also choosing the best of a certain number. Okay, so what I mean here is, for example, they have to create literary analysis posts about 3 or 5 of the 10 novels. Okay, so the posts are due before we discuss the novels, because I want it to be their original analysis, and that's something that they base off of our class conversation. So they're due at certain times, but because they have 10 options, they can choose which 3 or which 5 they want to turn in. And if they turn in more than those numbers, then the best of those are the only ones that count towards their grade. Okay, so just a specific example, if they have to do 3 out of 8, okay, and someone does 5, then the top 3 of those 5 are the only ones that are included toward their overall grade. That way they have choices on which ones to write about, first off. But also, if they don't do as well as they want on the first 3 they do, they can do more and improve their grade that way. So that can be a reason to do ones earlier, but also a reason to do more than required in order to get a better grade. So 2 ways of giving them choices in that particular tip. Now, if you don't do a group project for a specific unit, you probably still do group activities at some point. And in that case, letting students choose their group mates will, of course, be another way of giving them options and letting them choose people that they work well with or that they're comfortable with. So if they don't know anybody yet, if it's early on in the semester, maybe you assign them, or maybe you just say the people around you will be your first group. But letting them get choices in who they choose to work with can be very helpful. So I definitely do this with the major unit. That's a group project. But even in small cases, having them choose can be, very easy if they're all in the classroom. If you're doing still something hybrid or something online, then of course breakout rooms are easier to create just by automatically doing them. It's much faster, but you might have, we're doing a group project next week, here's slots for the groups, sign in who you want to work with, and I'm going to create the breakout rooms before class begins, right? And so that way they can still choose, but you can have them created, and so they're easy to do early on, right? Because you know who's going to be in each group. Now these next two tips are about major projects only, but there's still another tip after that, so make sure you keep watching for that last one. But the first one here is to have students choose what type of feedback format they receive for a major unit. So obviously, usually I just give written feedback in the margins or a little paragraph or two at the end of a unit, but perhaps it'd be faster to just do an audio recording of yourself, replying to as you read through something. Oh, this is great. Oh, this needs work. You can use this here. You can do that there. Great job on this. And just really do a voice recording of your feedback and then just upload the file on Canvas or whatever LMS system you're using and then go ahead and share that with them rather than having to write down notes for each project. Okay, so this could be a bit more work on your part because obviously you'll have students choose different formats, but it could be an option, right, that you might want to give them maybe from just one project, but maybe for all of them. Okay, so in my experience, most of them choose to do written feedback. They like what they're comfortable with, but I definitely have had some who choose audio. And you might also choose video, right? So screen share or do a screen recording of their paper and you pointing out things in it. Okay, so I've done that before in lessons, but not necessarily in feedback. So that's something I'm going to consider trying later on this semester. Right? So major units, give them feedback in the format that they think is most helpful, because maybe they'll listen on the way to class, right, or on the way home when they're driving. If it's an audio recording, okay, so it might be more comfortable for them because they're so used to listening to things versus reading things, perhaps. So that can be a way of getting them to actually listen to your feedback. For these major units as well, I always have an extra credit option in the assignment sheet. So in this case, I'm having 3 major units in my current classes that I'm teaching, and so each one has a different small extra credit activity they can do to get up to 5 points on their project. Okay? So my first paper, they could create an infographic that synthesizes the research they did for their target audience. In my second one, they can create a short narrative where they explain how the research they did, the primary research they did, can change someone in their life, themselves, the people they research, the people that are the target audience. Maybe the world can be changed by the research they did. So it's just a short narrative explaining the power of their work, basically. And then in my third unit, where they had a longer argumentative research paper, they can create an abstract for the top of it in order to get them experience with that genre as well. So these are all optional, extra credit, of course, but they can get up to 5 points, which a lot of them have taken me up on, at least in Unit 1. We'll see about Unit 2. So what kind of extra credit activities can you do that could help them bulk up their grade, of course, but also learn something that's really good for them, right? So learning about a different genre in your field, or learn about how to resynthesize information visually, because obviously visuals are very important in today's world, right? That multimodal literacy, that visual literacy. So what genres would work well for you for extra credit? And then something that's really important to consider is not only having office hours, but also having appointment times that they can choose from outside of your office hours. So in my case, I have the same timed office hours on Tuesday and Thursday, but I also have by appointment, and I emphasize that constantly. Okay, so for you, maybe it's even better, right, if you actually give them choices in your office hours. So maybe Tuesday from 10 to 11, Wednesday from 11 to 12, Thursday from 12 to 1. So you have different times for your students to go. So if they can't make any 10 to 11 because they have classes, they can make the other 2. But if you're using the same times, which can just be very, easy to do, right? If you do it at the same time, it's more convenient often for the professor, then you can just say, remember, you can always email me and create an appointment time outside these hours, right? Monday through Friday, let me know. And so I do this really often, remind them of the non-office hour times. So most of my appointments with students actually happen outside of office hours, which is fine for me as long as they're trying to connect. I want them to do that. So I just emphasize that, especially when we're near the end of each major unit. Okay, so let them know you're not only available to them during office hour times. You can make appointments to see them. As I mentioned, I do have a video about 6 other ideas to engage students in virtual learning. So once you click like and subscribe on this video, you can head to that one. I have it on screen right now. And I have another one that might interest you as well. So I'll see you next time with a new video.